Let's begin with chapter number 11 from your history book of grade 6, and the name of the chapter is the Gupta Empire. The Golden Age. After the fall of the Mauryan Empire, several foreign tribes, including the Kushans, invaded India. Invaded means they came to India and they rule India. Okay, from outside they're coming and they are ruling. That is called invade. Coming from outside, they're coming to the country to capture the power, invading. The Kushan ruler, Kanishka, established a large and powerful empire in the North India. In the south, an independent and powerful kingdom was established by the Satvahans. The decline of the power of the Kushans and the Satvahans was followed by a period of political chaos, means disturbances and instability. For more than 100 years, India was fragmented, means divided into numerous means many, small kingdoms and republics. By the beginning of the 4th century CE, these kingdoms and republics were united under imperial power, means under a foreign rule of the Gupta dynasty. For the next 200 years, the history of India was dominated by the powerful and highly efficient and accomplished means established or developed, you can say, Gupta rulers. Some historians have described the period, this Gupta period, as the golden age of the ancient Indian history. What are the sources from where we are coming to know about all these things? One is the literary sources, other is the archaeological sources. So the history of the Gupta Empire has been reconstructed on the basis of several sources of valuable informations about the Gupta era. The great Sanskrit poet and dramatist Kalidas's outstanding literary work, he used to write many dramas, or you can say stories also. According to his writing, we come to know about the Gupta Empire. So his outstanding literary works such as Abhij Nana Sakuntalam and Meghadut. The Chinese traveler. From China, this traveler came to India. Okay, Chinese traveler Fa Huan, an account on his observation and of the life under the Guptas. So he used to observe and he used to write in his book. So archaeological sources. The Allahabad pillar inscription means in the pillar itself the things are written down. The iron pillar, then we are having the scripture of the seated Buddha, the Deoghar temple at, you can say, Ajanta caves, the ruins of Nalanda, and coins. These are the sources from where we come to know about the Gupta Empire. Next, we are having what is the political history. Chandragupta I. Chandragupta I, the first important ruler of the Gupta dynasty, ascended the throne of Magad in 320 CE. He married Kumara Devi, the princess of the powerful Lichavi tribe of Vaishali, and was given Patliputra as dowry. He ruled from Patliputra and laid the foundation of the Gupta Empire by conquering a number of territories with the support of Lichavis. He expanded his kingdom as far as Allahabad. He ruled for 15 years and took the title of Maharaja Dhiraja. Next comes Samudragupta. Samudragupta ascended the throne on after the death of his father Chandragupta I. He was one of the greatest ruler of Indian history. The Allahabad pillar inscription and by his court poet Harisina provides valuable information about his conquest. Samudragupta is supposed to have defeated 9 kings in the north and 12 kings in the south. Samudragupta followed a policy of conquest and expansion. In the north, he occupied Aryavarta, that is the western Uttar Pradesh, and the regions around Delhi. These territories were added to his empire and ruled directly by him. Next, he led an expedition unto the Deccan. He reached as far south as the Pallav capital, that is Kanchi, in Tamil Nadu. The Pallav king realized he could not face Samudragupta alone. So he formed a powerful confederate. That means he formed a team of the kings of the South India under his leadership. Samudragupta has to face this powerful alliance, means this team he is facing now. Samudragupta defeated the confederacy, or you can say the team, but did not annex, that means did not capture these south territories, as he realized it would not be easy to control such a vast empire in the absence of proper transport and communication facilities. The rulers of the south accepted him as their overlord and paid him tribute, that means gave him some amount of money every year. The frontier states of eastern and western India meekly submitted to Samudragupta without a fight, as they feared his power and military excellence. And these included the kingdoms of Assam, Nepal, and Bengal in the east, as and the tribal republics of Rajasthan, and in the west. They accepted him as their overlord and paid large sums, means large amounts of money as tribute. Means every year they used to pay certain amount of money. Samudragupta celebrated his victory by performing the Asva Medha Yagna, like his father. He took the title of Maharaja Dhiraja. Okay. Next, the substantial tributaries from the subordinate kingdoms and republics is enriched the royal treasury and contributed to the financial stability and prosperity, means development of the Gupta Empire. Samudragupta's direct rule extended from Bengal to the east and to Delhi in the west, and from Himalayas in the north to the Narmada in the south. His indirect control over the vassals, that is, the subordinate states, covered a much large area. Samudragupta was not only a military genius but a talented musician and poet as well. He encouraged Sanskrit literature and patronized prominent scholars like Harisena. He was a strict follower of Hinduism but was tolerant towards other religions also. Buddhist scholars were patronized by him. Chandragupta II. Chandragupta II was, you can say, also known as Chandragupta Vikramaditya, was the able son of an able father. Like his father Samudragupta, he was a powerful ruler. The Gupta Empire reached the height of its power and glory during his rule. He strengthened the position through matrimonial alliances. He married the daughter of powerful Naga ruler. He gave his daughter in marriage to the Vakataka ruler in the Deccan, from whom he got valuable help during the campaigns against the Sakas. So, Chandragupta II exceeded the western boundaries of his kingdom to the Arabian Sea by defeating the Saka ruler. This was a very important victory because it gave the Guptas control over the three seaports on the western coast. There were outlets to vast overseas trade. This led to economic growth and prosperity. He moved his capital to Ujjain. Vikramaditya was a great patron of art and literature. The Navratnas, or the nine gems, including Kalidas, the great Sanskrit poet and the dramatist, are associated with his rule. He was a devout follower of Lord Vishnu. The Chinese scholar Fa Huan visited India during Vikramaditya's reign. His account is an rich source, or you can say important source of information on the Indian way of life during the Gupta period, later Guptas. Vikramaditya was succeeded by his son Kumaragupta, who maintained peace and prosperity. His successor Sakandagupta are defeated and drove out the barbaric hordes of the Huns, and so who invaded India. Sakandagupta's successors were weak and could not protect the empire for the repeated onslaughts of the Huns. By the beginning of the 16th century CE, the Huns had destroyed the Gupta Empire and shattered the political unity in India. The downfall of the Gupta Empire in the middle of the 6th century CE led to the establishment of many small kingdoms which were constantly at war with one another. The Huns continued their raids in northern India. In the beginning of the 7th century CE, Harshavardhana, the king of Thanisar, succeeded in bringing all the kingdoms under his control, establishing political unity, peace, and prosperity in northern India. Thank you.